Hi, I'm Clara. I used to believe my dad was the one person I could trust, but then I found out he'd stolen $50,000 from me. My own father. He called me too emotional, too careless, said I didn't deserve it. And the night the waiter brought the gift box to our table, his hands started shaking. That's when I realized he wasn't afraid of losing money. He was afraid of what I'd finally found out. I hadn't seen my father in months. The last time we spoke, it wasn't much of a conversation, just a few clipped words, a cold nod, and him walking away like I didn't matter. So when he suddenly invited me to dinner at some upscale restaurant downtown, I was skeptical. But I went. Because he's still my father. Because a small, foolish part of me hoped maybe this time would be different. The place was too nice. One of those spots with white tablecloths and quiet music where the waiter refilled your water after every sip. I didn't belong there. I walked in wearing my only decent pair of heels, ones I hadn't worn since the divorce. The hostess smiled too politely as she led me to his table. He was already seated, sipping something amber and expensive, like we were two old friends catching up instead of a fractured family trying to look whole. "Clara," he beamed, standing to kiss my cheek. "You look great." His voice was warm, but his eyes, they didn't match. They never did. I sat down, clutching the strap of my purse a little tighter. He launched into small talk like nothing ever happened, like he hadn't ignored my texts for weeks after the custody hearing, like he didn't miss my last birthday. I kept a smile on my face, numb, guarded. Work's been rough. 2 jobs, 1 kid, barely making rent. But I didn't tell him that. He didn't ask. "This place," I muttered, glancing around. "Kind of out of my league." He laughed. "Tonight's on me. Just relax." He lifted his glass. "To new beginnings." I didn't lift mine, just nodded. "Sure." He ordered for both of us without asking. Always did, like control. Then he waved over the wine menu and pointed at something that made my stomach tighten. "That one," he told the waiter. "The 86. I peeked at the list. Over $400. I leaned in. "Dad, that's—" "Don't worry about it," he cut me off, flashing that salesman grin. "You only live once." "Yeah, especially when it's not your money." We made it halfway through the appetizer before he started slipping in the digs. "Still working both jobs?" he asked, tearing into a piece of bread. "That can't leave much time for your daughter." I chewed slowly, swallowed the sting. "We manage." He smiled like he knew better. "Maybe if you had someone around to help." I stared at my plate. "We're good, thanks." Then he asked it, casually, like it was nothing. "How's your savings account? Still with the credit union?" I froze. "What?" I asked, trying to sound neutral. He shrugged. "Just curious, making sure you're okay out there." I didn't answer. He shifted the topic, but something inside me went cold. He'd never once cared about my finances, not even when I was living out of my car for a month. The entrees came. I barely tasted mine. He talked about a woman he was dating. Some younger client, of course. I nodded, pretending to listen. My thoughts spun elsewhere. Then dessert was coming, and with it, something I never expected. The waiter returned, not with cake, but with a small silver gift box. "For you, ma'am," from the gentleman. I frowned. "I didn't—" "It's from your father," the waiter clarified, setting it gently in front of me. My dad's face went pale. "What is this?" I asked. He said nothing, just stared at the box like it might explode. I opened it slowly. Inside was a folded document and a flash drive. My stomach sank. I unfolded the paper, read the first few lines. My chest tightened. It was a withdrawal record. From my account. My name on it. His signature scribbled in the corner. I looked at him. His hands were trembling. He reached for his drink but missed the glass. "Where did you get that?" he whispered. "You took money from me?" He didn't answer. "The audio's on here?" I held up the drive. "You recorded yourself. What the hell, Dad?" He stared at the table like he could fall through it. I couldn't feel my legs. I trusted you, I said quietly. You knew I was struggling. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I stood up. The chair scraped against the polished floor. The wine, his precious wine, sat untouched. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked away. I thought I was ready to face him again, but I didn't know someone else was watching me that night. It was just past midnight. I had spent hours sitting there, staring at the flickering light of the flash drive plugged into my laptop. The files were still open, bank statements, voice memos, emails, but my mind had drifted somewhere else, somewhere darker. I hadn't even noticed how stiff my back had gotten, how the hum of the fridge suddenly seemed louder than before. Then a sharp knock. Not the kind neighbors use. This was different. 3 quick, assertive taps. My breath caught. I closed the laptop, yanked the flash drive out, and tucked it into the drawer under the coffee table. I stepped toward the door, barefoot, heart pounding. "Who is it?" I asked, but my voice cracked. No answer. Just the faint creak of the stairs outside my apartment. I peeked through the peephole. Empty hallway. I waited, frozen. 30 seconds passed. A minute. I opened the door just a crack and glanced around. Nothing. But when I stepped out, something caught my eye, a business card tucked beneath the welcome mat. It read, "You're not the only one who wants justice. Call me." No name, just a number. That night, sleep didn't come. I lay on the couch, lights dimmed, staring at the ceiling. My mind wasn't on the card or the stranger. It was on Seraphine, my sister. She used to braid my hair every morning before school. I trusted her with every secret. And now she was listed as the recipient of the money that vanished from my account. The name on the statement wasn't an alias, it was hers. I pulled the flash drive out again and opened the folder labeled emails. Dozens of them, messages between my father and a private email address I hadn't seen before. At first glance, they were benign, mundane updates, bank confirmations, but one thread, dated 3 months ago, made me sit up. Transfer to SV complete. She agreed to keep her mouth shut, still waiting on Clara's half. He wasn't just stealing, he was paying Seraphine off to stay silent. About what? That was the question now. Not just where my money had gone, but what it was hiding. By morning, I wasn't crying, I was documenting. Printing emails, backing up files, scanning each folder for connections. I built a timeline on my wall with yellow Post-its and a red Sharpie. Every transaction, every phrase in those audio logs, every clue got a place. Midway through the day, I played one voice memo again. I'd already heard it 3 times, but something about the static-filled silence after the words, "she trusts too easily," haunted me. It wasn't just my father's voice. There was another, female, slightly distorted. "She'll get over it, just like she always does." That voice, I knew it. The tight vowels, the clipped consonants. Seraphine. I shut my eyes, inhaled, then hit replay, again and again, until doubt became certainty. Later that afternoon, I called her. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hey, Clara, everything okay? I need to see you." A pause. Then, cautiously, "Sure. When?" "Tonight." I didn't give her time to dodge. I set the place, our old family diner on Marconi Avenue. A neutral place, too public for yelling, or maybe just public enough. When I arrived, she was already there, seated by the window, nursing a glass of iced tea. She smiled like nothing was wrong. I sat across from her, pulled out a printed statement, and slid it across the table. She didn't touch it, just stared. "Clara." Her voice was soft. Guilty. "Why didn't you just tell me?" She sighed. "Because I knew what it would do to you." My hands clenched under the table. "You let him steal from me. You helped him." "No," she said quickly. "It wasn't like that." I leaned in. "Then what was it like?" Her lips trembled. but she didn't cry. Seraphine never cried in public. He said it was a loan, that you'd never notice. And you believed that? I didn't have a choice. He said if I didn't take it, he'd stop paying Mom's nursing bills. My heart stopped. What? I didn't take that money for me, she whispered. It was for her care, for her home. He made it clear. Either I accepted the gift, or Mom would be out on the street. I stared at her, stunned. That night, after I left the diner, I didn't go home. I walked for an hour through empty streets, trying to decide what was worse, that she took the money or that she let me believe I was crazy for suspecting it. When I finally did get back to my apartment, the card from earlier was still on the table. You're not the only one who wants justice. I picked up my phone and dialed the number. A man answered. Calm, direct. I've been waiting for your call, he said. Who are you? A friend, he said. But more importantly, someone who knows what your father's really been doing. And who else he's done it to. My throat dried. What do you want? To help you. But you need to act fast, because your sister isn't the only one he's bought. I showed up at the old country house right before sunset, the kind of light that made everything look a little too soft, a little too forgiving. The front porch was lined with lanterns, flickering like nothing bad had ever happened there. I had a folder of printed statements tucked into my bag and a phone fully charged, just in case. But I didn't plan on starting anything, not yet. Seraphine greeted me like it was any ordinary Sunday. That wide, glossy smile of hers stretched across her face as if we hadn't been on opposite sides of a very ugly truth just 2 days ago. Clara, you made it, she chirped, her arms outstretched. I let her hug me, didn't squeeze back. The living room buzzed with voices, neighbors, a couple of distant cousins, some family friends I barely remembered. Light drinks, light music, small plates passed around like none of us had secrets buried deep in the walls. Everyone seemed to look either too long or not at all. My cousin Layla greeted me with a little too much cheer. My uncle avoided eye contact altogether. I smiled, that tight, polite kind that hides everything. Inside, I was scanning, mapping, listening. Families love to smile while sweeping things under Persian rugs. And in our house, we had enough rugs to cover a lifetime of lies. I stayed by the edge of the crowd, sipping water, pretending to scroll my phone. Every now and then, Seraphine's voice would carry over the music, bright, controlled, too rehearsed. An hour in, I excused myself to take a call. There was no call. I stepped into the hallway near the kitchen, lingering just outside the arched entry. That's when I heard her. She's not as dumb as she used to be, Seraphine said. Her voice dropped at the end, like it was meant for someone who already understood the punchline. Another voice, Evadne, my cousin, the one who used to braid my hair and sneak me cookies behind Grandma's back. Well, Dad said we just need to delay, not deny, Evadne replied with a chuckle. Exactly, Seraphine said. She can ask all she wants. It doesn't change what's signed. Clara's always been a little slow to catch up. They laughed. I didn't move. My hand slid into my pocket, tapped the record button on my phone. The screen lit up, capturing every syllable. That moment, I wasn't their sister. I was a mark, a target, a joke. I let the recording run for another 30 seconds before I backed away, heartbeat thick in my ears. I didn't need more. I already had enough. Back in the living room, I smiled again, took another sip, watched Evadne laugh with someone near the fireplace. She looked exactly the same as when we were 10. That made it worse. Later that night, back in my apartment, I dropped my bag on the couch and went straight for my laptop. Pulled up my old bank records, the ones from college, the student loan payment I thought had gone missing. My father said it was a banking error. I believed him. But tonight, I checked the routing details again. The money didn't disappear. It was rerouted into a family trust account. The name on the account? Seraphine. I sat there staring at the screen, my chest hollow. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was the lie, the way it had been packaged with concern and wrapped in silence. Every time I chose peace, I whispered to no one, they chose the next lie. I got up, found a pen, and wrote one sentence on the wall above my desk. Loyalty doesn't mean silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just opened a fresh notebook, pulled out every document, every printed page, and started organizing them into a timeline. Event. Lie. Witness. Motive. If they wanted a chess match, they should have known I'd been watching the board this whole time. I flipped through a few old photos on the shelf, found one of me and Seraphine as kids, standing in front of this very house, arms around each other, smiling like none of this would ever be possible. I picked it up, stared for a long second, then turned it face down. There's a difference between being the quiet one and being the one they never saw coming. I wheeled into Dad's suburban driveway in the late afternoon sun, carrying more than a handbag, evidence in my jacket pocket, resolve in my bones. The house looked just as I remembered, white siding, hydrangeas in bloom, a welcome mat that pretended everything was normal. I braced for smiles behind masks. Inside, the smell of fresh roses and warm bread hit me before voices did. Seraphine met me in the foyer, her hug made of courtesy, not affection. Her eyes flicked sideways when I passed the hallway where childhood photos lined the wall. I caught a cousin sliding one of my pictures behind another frame. Subtle, calculated. I sat at the brunch table. A few neighbors, cousins, aunts. The chatter was light. Weather, church, who's going where this summer? But everyone's tone had a notch too much civility. Magnus smiled as though nothing had shifted, offering me coffee. I declined, keeping my expression neutral. I said carefully, "About that gift box the waiter brought me, do you know anything about it?" He shook his head and gave a rehearsed paternal look. "I have no idea. I just asked for you to have a nice evening." I studied him. Something in the corner of his eye betrayed stress. Seraphine leaned forward, loud enough for all to hear. "You never questioned Dad before. Now you think you're a detective?" Her voice clipped, cold. I kept my gaze fixed. "I'm just asking for what's mine." She scoffed. "You always thought you deserved more. Maybe he's just showing you reality." Their laughter rose, sharp, dismissive, echoing. Every guest went quiet. I felt their eyes on me, measuring me. I recalled her teasing me in high school, how she told me I'd never succeed. She won praise, I learned to shrink. But now I stood. I excused myself under the pretense of a phone call. I slipped into the study where Dad stored files. I placed printed statements and that flash drive into a crisp envelope addressed to his lawyer. I treaded back to the dining room and dropped it beside him, fingers stiff. He glanced down, froze. The hush was deafening. A cough broke the tension. Guests shifted in their seats. I returned and sat, scanning his face. Pale, lips moving silently. Inside, I told myself, this is chess, not war. I didn't yell. I moved. The conversation resumed, but softer. Words held back. Eyes avoided mine. I sipped iced tea and watched. Seraphine's gaze darted away. Magnus swallowed too visibly. A neighbor changed the topic awkwardly. I thought, he's not invincible. He believed I'd never dare him. At the end, I rose. No explanation. I walked out quietly. The front door closed with a soft click. I left bruised but not broken, resolve gathering behind each step. The night air was heavy when I drove back to my father's house. I hadn't planned on returning so soon, but the silence after that brunch had been louder than any confrontation. The porch light was still on, like an open invitation I didn't trust. I knocked once, then let myself in. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of a wall clock that used to soothe me as a kid. Magnus was in his study, the same room where I used to sit at his feet, pretending to understand the numbers in his ledgers. Now, those ledgers looked more like tombstones, each page holding a secret. He looked up when I entered, surprise flickering across his face before the mask slid back into place. "You couldn't sleep?" he asked, leaning back in his chair like this was another late-night talk between father and daughter. "I want truth," I said simply. He smiled faintly, the kind that could pass for understanding if you didn't know him. I knew better. I laid the folder on his desk, printed statements, the flash drive, the complaint letter. His eyes darted to it, then back to me. For the first time, I saw a trace of uncertainty, not fear, yet, but the awareness that I'd stopped being the child who needed his approval. Before he could respond, Iris stepped quietly into the room. I hadn't known she'd come. She stood in the doorway, hands clasped, voice steady. "Clara deserves to know," she said. Magnus's expression hardened. "Not now, Iris." She ignored him. "Your grandmother left a trust, Clara. Money meant for all of us. He took from it years ago, said it was for house repairs." I froze. "The house repairs?" She nodded, opening a worn envelope. Inside were old documents, signatures, receipts, bank statements. My father's handwriting stared back at me. Magnus stood abruptly. "That was decades ago. I kept this family afloat." "You used her name," Iris said quietly. "You took what wasn't yours." The air seemed to thin. My mind replayed flashes of my grandmother sitting on that same couch years ago, whispering, "Don't let him take what's ours." I thought it was about furniture, maybe keepsakes. I hadn't understood then. I looked at him. "You took from her, too?" His jaw tightened. I needed to keep things running. "For who?" I asked. "Seraphine? The new car? The trips?" He slammed his palm against the desk. "Watch your tone." I didn't flinch. "You stole from her memory, from what she built for us, for me." He stared, chest rising fast. His authority no longer filled the room. It trembled in it. I reached for the papers Iris had brought and scanned the details. The trust had been meant for all descendants, equal shares. Over the years, withdrawals had quietly drained it. Each transaction matched one of Seraphine's gifts: college tuition, car payments, even the down payment on her first condo. Every lie fit like a puzzle piece. I set the papers down, feeling my pulse slow instead of race. "You already had money," I said softly. "You just wanted control." He tried to speak again, but his voice cracked. "Clara, I built everything here. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut in. "You built it on someone else's legacy." For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the desk lamp. I reached for the letter, the one I'd written after that brunch, and slid it closer to him. "I could file this tonight," I said, "but I'll wait. You have one chance to make it right." His eyes widened. "Don't do this to family." I turned toward the door, my hand already on the knob. Family doesn't steal legacies. Behind me, I heard the creak of the chair, the sound of his breath breaking under the weight of it all. I didn't turn back. I walked out, past the quiet hallway, past the family portraits that once meant something. Outside, the air felt clearer, colder, but cleaner. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't the one running. 3 nights passed. The envelope I'd left him still sat untouched on his desk, at least on the outside. I knew better. If Magnus had any intention of playing innocent, that envelope shattered the illusion. Tonight I wasn't there to argue. I came to finish what I started. I knocked lightly and stepped in with a casual smile. "Just grabbing some old tax files," I said, already halfway through the room. He didn't answer. Probably watching from down the hall, pretending not to care. I didn't need him to speak. I needed him to see. The study was dim, heavy with the weight of everything we weren't saying. I kept my breathing even as I unlocked my phone. My thumb hovered over the video Iris had forwarded. I hit play. It was grainy, shaky phone footage, but clear enough. Magnus sitting in the corner of that quiet bistro, leaning in too close to a young waiter. An envelope exchanged, a quick nod, a smirk. Then the caption someone had added, "For Seraphine's future." My chest tightened. That wasn't dinner talk. That was a payoff. It didn't matter if it was legal, it was secret, hidden, deceitful. I paused the video right on his face. It was him. Not years ago. Recently. I snapped a screenshot, zoomed in. Hands, smile, envelope. It all said one thing. He wasn't done taking. I whispered like he was in the room. "I saw you. And the world will too." A calm washed over me. It wasn't power. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I slipped the screenshot into a new envelope, along with a photo of the will, and a handwritten note. You stole from me. Return what was never yours. It matched the gold-embossed stationery he loved so much. Neat, polished, deceptive, just like him. I placed it exactly where the first envelope had rested. I closed the blinds, straightened the family photo he always kept tilted just enough to make himself look thinner. Then I walked out and waited. Footsteps creaked the hallway behind me. I didn't turn. I just stood by the wall, still as a statue. He entered. I heard the chair pull back. The soft hiss of the envelope opening. The sharp breath he drew in. Then the scrape of his shoes as he pushed back and stood. I turned before he reached the doorway. This is insane, he said. His voice trembled more than I expected. Eyes glassy, but not with guilt, fear. I stared at him. No, I said softly. This is overdue. You'll ruin us. No, I repeated, firmer now. I'm saving me. He didn't follow when I left. The walk home felt longer. I made it to my apartment, locked the door behind me, dropped my keys in the bowl. My hands were shaking. I made tea without thinking, sat at the table. Iris had texted. Did it go through? I typed back. He knows. He'll have to move tonight. I set my phone down, flipped over the picture frame on the shelf. The one of all of us, smiling, happy, fake, it stayed face down. Then I pulled out my journal, wrote one line. I don't need to see him squirm. I just need him to feel it. I turned off the lights and stood in the dark, watching the streetlights spill through the blinds. The weight hadn't lifted, but something in me had shifted. He thought I'd blink. He didn't know. I don't blink anymore. The invitation came 2 days after I left the envelope. A family review night, Seraphine called it, as though we were hosting some kind of reconciliation dinner instead of standing on the edge of collapse. I almost didn't go, but curiosity, or maybe a need for closure, got me there. When I walked into the house, it felt staged, like every piece of furniture had been placed not for comfort, but for control. The chandelier gleamed too bright. The family photos were perfectly aligned, all smiles, no truth. Seraphine stood by the fireplace, her dress just a bit too formal, voice sugary smooth. Clara, she said, I'm glad you came. Let's put everything behind us. Magnus sat in his usual chair, stiff-backed, silent. I noticed the envelope from before, creased, opened, but still there. His hands rested beside it like he wanted to pretend it didn't exist. I smiled faintly, nodding to the others already seated. Sure, I said. Let's review the family. I sat across from him. The weight of the moment pressed into my chest, but I didn't break eye contact. Everyone else looked everywhere but at me. The tension was an uninvited guest, sitting right between us. When the chatter died down, I reached into my bag and pulled out my tablet. I'd like to share something, I said. My voice was calm, too calm. Seraphine shifted, forced a laugh. Is this another one of your presentations? Not quite. I tapped the screen. The glow lit the room. Numbers, names, transfers. Her name, again and again. I zoomed in. These are from the family trust, I said quietly. Over 100,000 moved under your authorization. A ripple moved through the room. One of the cousins whispered something and stopped halfway. Seraphine's face froze, then flushed. That's not true. Dad said... I cut in, not loud, but final. Dad said a lot of things. You siphoned from the account you weren't entitled to touch. Magnus's fingers twitched. That's enough, he said, voice cracking slightly. I turned toward him. You taught her how, didn't you? Seraphine stood, trembling. You're jealous. You always have been. You want to destroy this family. I stood, clapping slowly. Bravo, I said. You stole everything except courage. The room went still. Even the air stopped moving. Then, a few faint claps, hesitant, confused, from guests who understood too late that truth had just taken the stage. Magnus's jaw tightened. Seraphine sat down, eyes darting toward him, waiting for him to fix it. But he didn't. I looked around. I didn't ask to be raised in the dark, I said. I just wanted someone to tell the truth. It wasn't a performance. It was a confession, mine and theirs. Then Magnus, perhaps desperate to reclaim control, reached for the small gold gift box on the table. I recognized it instantly, the same one that once held the flash drive. He smiled weakly, trying to turn the scene. "This," he said, "is proof I've always been transparent." He opened it, empty. The silence that followed was louder than any shouting could have been. His face drained of color, his lips parted, but no sound came. The box shook in his trembling hands. "I took it back," I said softly. "You gave nothing but lies." Someone muttered, "My God!" Another person stood to leave. Seraphine pressed a hand to her mouth, her mask of confidence breaking into disbelief. Magnus sat down slowly, the box still open, staring into nothing. The symbol of his power, hollow. I stepped closer. "You wanted an audience," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "Now you have one." He didn't move, didn't breathe, just sat there, man of the house, stripped bare by his own reflection. I turned to the door. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for finally seeing me." The sound of my heels on the marble echoed as I walked out. No one followed. Outside, the night was still. Cool air hit my face. I looked back once through the window. The family that once hid behind money and legacy now fractured, the mirrors reflecting only themselves. I didn't feel joy. Not even victory. Just clarity. I had shattered their illusion and freed myself from it. Morning crept through the blinds, soft and cold, the kind of light that makes everything look honest, even the things you don't want to see. My house was silent, the kind of silence that carries weight. I hadn't slept much since that night at Magnus's. The image of him holding that empty box replayed in my head like a wound that refused to close. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and noticed my mother's old desk still sitting by the window. I hadn't opened its drawers in years. Maybe I just wasn't ready. But something in me, call it intuition or maybe exhaustion, pushed me toward it. The top drawer slid open easily. Receipts, faded photos, a dried flower. The second drawer stuck halfway, the wood swollen from time. I pulled harder, and that's when I saw it. An envelope wedged in the back, yellowed but sealed. My name written in her looping cursive. To Clara, when the time is right. For a long time, I just held it. My fingers traced the letters, my mother's handwriting soft and familiar. I wanted to put it back, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But that quiet part of me, the one that had been asking for answers since childhood, wouldn't let go. I tore the seal. Her words started warm, like she was sitting across from me again, coffee in hand, talking about small things. My hair, my laughter, how proud she was. Then, halfway through, the ink changed tone. She wrote about Magnus, how she had discovered the truth years ago. The missing funds, the lies, the emotional manipulation. She said she stayed silent to protect me. "I thought I could hold the storm off," she wrote. "But storms don't wait for courage." My chest tightened. My mother had known. She had carried that burden alone. She'd watched him twist me, make me believe I was careless, foolish, unworthy of trust, all while he was the one emptying accounts behind closed doors. I read until the words blurred. One line cut the deepest. "He used your light for his shadow." I pressed the letter to my chest and wept. Not like a child, not even like someone mourning, more like someone realizing the foundation of her life had been built on rot. The grief wasn't sharp anymore. It was slow, heavy, clarifying. By afternoon, I'd read it 5 times. The final words echoed, Do not inherit silence. That evening, I called every family member, including Magnus. I told them we'd meet at the park the next morning. You'll want to hear this, I said simply. The next day, sunlight poured through the oak trees, gold and honest. People gathered near the benches. Seraphine, eyes red and wary. Cousins whispering. Magnus standing apart, arms crossed. I stood in the center, the letter trembling in my hand, but my voice steady. This was from my mother, I began. Written years ago. She wanted me to know what you all helped hide. Magnus shifted. Clara, this isn't the place. I raised a hand. You've spoken enough for a lifetime. The words cut through the air. I unfolded the letter and read aloud. Every sentence landed like a stone dropped in still water. When I reached the part about him stealing from my college fund, a cousin gasped. Seraphine turned away. My father tried to interrupt again, but his voice faltered. She stayed quiet, I said, so I could have peace. But you turned her silence into your shield. Magnus's face hardened. You don't understand the choices adults make. No, I said, I understand perfectly. Adults lie to survive, but parents lie to protect. You did neither. He stepped toward me, but I didn't move. I kept reading, until the last line, do not inherit silence. I looked up. Truth isn't betrayal, I said quietly. Hiding it is. No one spoke. Even the wind stilled for a moment. Then someone began to cry softly. An ant, I think. Seraphine wiped her eyes, muttering, she knew all along. Magnus's jaw trembled. For the first time, I saw not power, but the hollow man beneath it, built from fear and control, undone by words written in a dead woman's hand. When I finished, I folded the letter carefully. I didn't feel victorious, just done. The family scattered slowly, like ashes carried by air. Magnus stayed rooted to the spot, his eyes lost somewhere far behind me. I walked toward the pond at the park's edge. The water shimmered, still and calm. My reflection looked different. Not softer, just clearer. I thought of her, my mother brushing my hair, humming under her breath. Her voice whispering, I carried your silence so you could carry your voice. I smiled, just slightly. Thank you for telling me, I whispered. The letter rustled in my coat pocket as I walked away, the wind folding around me like something new. Not forgiveness, not even peace, just space. Space for truth to live. The air carried that early autumn chill, the kind that whispered more than it spoke. I parked by the old cemetery gate and stepped out, the sound of leaves crunching under my shoes. The morning was still. Soft light slid through the fog, touching the edges of headstones like fingers brushing memories. I walked slowly, letter in hand, the same one I'd carried since the day I found it. The ink was faint now, but I could still feel her voice in every curve of the handwriting. When I reached her grave, I didn't speak right away. I just stood there, my breath visible in the cold air. The world around me seemed to hold its breath too. I traced her name carved into the granite. Lucinda May Holloway, 1954 to 2010. The years didn't seem real anymore. She'd been gone 15 of them, but that space between us felt both endless and smaller than a heartbeat. I did it, Mom, I said finally. My voice cracked, not from weakness, but from weight. I told them, all of it. He didn't deny it this time, he just stood there. And for the first time, I didn't feel small in front of him. The wind shifted, brushing my hair across my face. I smiled faintly. You told me not to inherit silence. I didn't. Not anymore. I knelt and placed a small silver pendant at the base of the headstone, the one she'd given me when I was 8, shaped like a lark in flight. You said one day I'd understand why birds don't stay in cages, I whispered. Now I do. The quiet wrapped around me. I thought of her laughter, her cooking on Sunday mornings, her soft hands guiding mine while I learned to sew. Not the pain, the life. That was what she'd wanted me to remember. I stayed until the sun lifted the fog, then turned back toward my car, the letter folded once more and pressed against my chest. Back home, I sat at the dining table with a legal pad and the checkbook that held the remaining balance of the reclaimed money. $50,000. The same number that had once been stolen from my future. I stared at it for a while, then smiled. "You took it from me once," I whispered, thinking of Magnus. "But now it's going to help someone else." That night, I called Iris. "I have an idea," I said. "A fund. For women who've had family take advantage of them. Financially, emotionally. I want to name it after Mom." "The Lucinda Light Fund," Iris repeated softly. "That's beautiful, Clara. Count me in." Over the next few weeks, I filled out forms, talked to lawyers, and reached out to community centers. Every signature, every phone call felt like a small act of rebellion, but also repair. I wasn't chasing vengeance anymore. I was building something. By mid-November, we had enough to host a small launch event at the Sacramento Community Hall. Nothing fancy, just a few dozen chairs, a table of pastries, a banner printed at a local shop. But when I walked in that morning, the room glowed. Maybe it was the autumn sun streaming through the windows. Maybe it was the feeling of purpose. When I stepped up to the microphone, I paused for a moment. The faces looking back at me weren't strangers, they were echoes. People who had been broken and rebuilt like I had. Some were silent, some smiled, some held tissues already knowing what this meant. I began simply. "There was a time when I believed silence was love," I said. "That protecting someone meant hiding the truth. My mother thought that too. It nearly destroyed us both. But truth, spoken with courage, is what saves people. This fund is not about revenge, it's about light." A quiet murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw Seraphine standing in the back, hands folded, her expression unreadable. Our eyes met. She didn't come closer, didn't say a word, just gave a slow, subtle nod. Not forgiveness, but understanding. And that was enough. When I finished speaking, Iris handed me a small gift box. "A tradition," she said. I opened it. Not jewelry this time, not deception, but slips of paper, pledges, donations, hope written in strangers' handwriting. The same kind of box Magnus once used to hide betrayal now carried the opposite. Healing. The applause was soft but steady. It wasn't about celebration. It was recognition. A collective breath released. That evening, after everyone left, I walked home. The streets were quiet, painted orange by the last of the sunset. My heels clicked against the pavement, each step lighter than the one before. For years, I had walked under the weight of what I couldn't say. Now, the silence around me didn't suffocate. It soothed. I thought of everything. Of Mom's voice, of Iris's loyalty, of Magnus's unraveling, of my own slow rebirth. "There's more strength in letting go," I murmured to myself, "than in holding on to pain." When I reached my front porch, I stopped. The air was cool. I looked up at the evening sky, streaks of pink and gold fading into blue. I placed my hand over my heart. "Mom," I said softly, "we're finally okay." The porch light flickered on as if in answer. I smiled, stepped inside, and closed the door behind me.